Land and blood. The first shot cracked through the morning air like thunder. Jack Morgan's head snapped up from the deer tracks he'd been following. His muscles tensed as a second shot echoed across the valley. Those shots came from the direction of his ranch. Jack swung onto his stallion in one fluid motion, the animal responding instantly to his urgency. They thundered across the open country, Jack's weathered face set like stone beneath his wide-brimmed hat. 8 years fighting for the Union had taught him to recognize trouble. The war between the states had ended 13 years ago, but some lessons stayed with a man forever. The nightmares still came sometimes. Shiloh, 1862. The screams of men torn apart by artillery. Jack had been a scout then, moving through enemy lines with nothing but a knife and his wits. They'd called him Ghost for his ability to appear and disappear without a sound. That skill had kept him alive when others fell. Black smoke billowed into the sky as Jack crested the final ridge. His jaw clenched at the sight below. The barn was ablaze, orange flames licking at the weathered wood. 3 riders circled the structure, their horses kicking up dust as they whooped and fired revolvers into the air. Jack's hand moved to the Winchester .73 rifle in his saddle holster. The familiar weight of the weapon steadied him as he assessed the situation. These weren't random drifters. Their horses were too good, their clothes too fine. Someone had sent them. He urged his mount forward, keeping to the tree line for cover. The first intruder never saw him coming. Jack's rifle butt connected with the man's temple, sending him sprawling in the dirt. The second man managed to turn, eyes widening in shock before Jack's fist found his jaw with bone-crunching force. The third rider was quicker. He wheeled his horse around, leveling a Colt Navy revolver at Jack's chest. "You must be Morgan," he sneered. Jack didn't waste breath on words. His Winchester came up smooth as silk, the shot dropping the gunman from his saddle before his finger could tighten on the trigger. The man hit the ground with a dull thud, clutching his shoulder. "Who sent you?" Jack's voice was low and dangerous as he dismounted, keeping his rifle trained on the wounded man. "Go to hell," the man spat, blood seeping between his fingers. Jack stepped closer, the leather of his boots creaking. "My barn's burning. My cattle are scattered. I'm not feeling particularly patient." The man's eyes darted to his fallen companions, then back to Jack. Fear replaced defiance. "Hayes sent us. William Hayes. Said to deliver a message." Jack's expression hardened. Hayes, the land baron who'd been buying up every acre from here to the territorial line. The man who'd made similar offers to 3 other ranchers in the valley. Each had refused. Each had suffered mysterious accidents afterward. "What message?" Jack demanded. "Said to tell you the railroad's coming through. Your land's in the way. Sell now, or there won't be anything left to sell." Jack checked the wounded man's pockets, finding what he feared most. A folded document. His deed. The original deed to his ranch, which he kept locked in his desk drawer. Someone had broken in, stolen his proof of ownership. "Your boss made a mistake," Jack said, tucking the paper inside his vest. "Tell Hayes if he wants my land, he'll have to come take it himself." The sound of hoofbeats interrupted them as a lone rider fled across the eastern ridge. Jack cursed under his breath. A fourth man, probably keeping watch. Now Hayes would know his warning party had failed. As Jack secured the intruders to take them to the sheriff, movement caught his eye near the creek that bordered his property. He approached cautiously, Winchester ready. A woman crouched by the water, her long black hair falling around her face as she washed blood from her arms. She wore a simple buckskin dress, torn at the shoulder. Her bronze skin marked her as Navajo. She sensed his presence immediately, freezing like a deer scenting danger. When she turned, Jack saw the bruises on her face, the rope burns around her wrists. Her dark eyes held a mixture of fear and defiance. "You hurt?" Jack asked, lowering his rifle slightly. She didn't respond. Body tensed to flee. "I won't harm you," Jack said. keeping his distance. "Those men do this to you?" The woman studied him, weighing his words against experience that clearly taught her to distrust men like him. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "They attack my village. Take me when I fight back." Jack noticed more bruises forming on her arms, the torn clothing. The implications made his blood boil. "I'm Jack Morgan. This is my land. You're safe here." Her eyes narrowed, skeptical. "No place safe." A groan from one of the tied-up men drew Jack's attention back to his immediate problems. "I need to deal with them," he said, nodding toward the captives. "There's a cabin up there. Fire's warm. You can rest if you want." He turned away, giving her the choice to stay or run. Behind him, he heard her moving, not away, but toward the cabin, following at a careful distance. Jack Morgan had spent 8 years fighting a war, then another 13 building his ranch and keeping to himself. He'd buried his wife, Caroline, 3 years ago after a fever took her in just 5 days. The small cross on the hill behind the cabin was all he had left of her, besides memories and the gold band he still wore. As he secured the last intruder, Jack glanced toward the cabin where the Navajo woman had disappeared inside. Hayes wanted his land. The woman needed shelter. Both problems had landed on his doorstep on the same bloody morning. Something told him this was just the beginning. Sheriff Tom Miller examined the 3 bound men in Jack's wagon with practiced indifference. His badge caught the midday sun as he scratched his graying beard. "Hayes, you say?" Miller's tone was carefully neutral. "That's a serious accusation, Jack. Man's got influence." Jack stood his ground in front of the jail, arms crossed over his chest. "These men were burning my property on his orders. One of them had my land deed in his pocket." "Could have stolen it themselves," Miller suggested, not meeting Jack's eyes. "Doesn't prove Hayes sent them." The pieces clicked into place. "Jesus, Tom, he's got to you too, hasn't he?" Miller's jaw tightened. "Watch yourself, Morgan. I'm still the law here." "Are you?" Jack stepped closer. "Because from where I'm standing, you're just another man Hayes has bought." The sheriff's hand drifted toward his holster. "I'm trying to help you, Jack. Walk away. Sell the land. Some fights can't be won. My father died clearing that land. Caroline is buried on that hill." Jack's voice was steel. "I'm not selling. Not to Hayes. Not to anyone." Miller sighed, shoulders slumping slightly. "Then God help you, because I can't." Jack turned away, disgusted. He'd known Tom Miller since Vicksburg, had trusted him once. Now the man wouldn't even meet his eyes. "I'll lock them up," Miller called after him, "but they'll post bail by sunset." Jack didn't respond. He'd seen what he needed to see. There would be no help from the law. As he rode back to his ranch, Jack's mind turned to the Navajo woman. He hadn't planned on having a guest, especially now with Hayes's men likely to return. But he couldn't turn her away, not in her condition. He found her sitting by his hearth, stiff and alert, wrapped in a blanket he recognized from his bed. She watched him carefully as he entered. "Those men," Jack said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door, "they work for a man named Hayes. William Hayes. You ever hear that name?" She nodded slowly. "White man. Takes land from my people, too. Says papers give him right." Jack moved to the stove, putting coffee on to boil. "What's your name?" "Sarah." The name came out carefully, as if she wasn't used to saying it. "That's your real name?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Name your people can say." Jack nodded. He understood. The white man's world demanded conformity, even down to what people called themselves. "How'd you end up with Hayes's men?" Sarah's eyes darkened. "They come to our camp. Say we on Hayes land now. When men resist, they shoot. Take women." Her hands tightened on the blanket. "I fought. Killed one with his own knife. They beat me. Say they sell me far away." Jack processed her words, the implications clear. Hayes wasn't just after ranch land. He wanted everything. "You're safe here," Jack said, pouring coffee into tin cups. "But I won't lie to you. Those men will be back." Sarah accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his. "Then I help fight." Jack studied her, seeing the steel beneath her injuries. "You any good with a rifle?" "I learned fast." The sound of a horse approaching cut their conversation short. Jack moved to the window, rifle ready. He relaxed slightly at the sight of Miguel Alvarez, his ranch hand, riding hard toward the cabin. Miguel dismounted in a cloud of dust, his dark features tight with concern. The young Mexican had worked for Jack for 3 years, proving himself reliable and skilled with both cattle and firearms. "Senor Morgan," Miguel called, relief evident in his voice. "Gracias a Dios. When I saw the barn—" "I'm fine, Miguel," Jack assured him, stepping outside. "Hayes's men paid us a visit." Miguel's expression darkened. "Hayes? I heard in town he has 30 men now. Armed men." 30? Jack frowned. That was more than he'd anticipated. Far more. "Professional gunmen, not just ranch hands," Miguel continued grimly. "I counted 12 in the saloon yesterday alone, each with matched Colts and the look of men who've killed before." Jack absorbed this news. The odds had just shifted dramatically against them. "They drink in saloons, show their guns," Miguel added. "Say soon all land between rivers will belong to Hayes." Jack glanced back at the cabin where Sarah watched from the doorway. "We have a guest," he said quietly to Miguel. "Navajo woman. Hayes's men took her. She escaped." Miguel's eyes widened. "Senor, this is not good. Hayes will come looking." "I'm counting on it," Jack replied. "But we need help." For the next 2 hours, they took an inventory of their resources. 6 rifles, 2 shotguns, and ammunition enough for a short fight, but not a siege. They had food stored, and the creek provided water, but 3 people couldn't defend the entire property against 30 professional gunmen. "We need more men," Miguel stated the obvious. Jack nodded. "The Alvarez brothers still owe me for getting their cattle through last winter." 3 more guns, Miguel agreed. "Maybe the Johnston place, too." 4 small ranchers against Hayes and his army? Sarah spoke from where she sat cleaning one of the rifles. Jack noted with approval that she handled the weapon with practiced ease, stripping and oiling the action with deft fingers. Not enough. Jack knew she was right. They needed leverage, not just manpower. "Those documents they stole," Jack said slowly. "My deed wasn't the only paper in that drawer. I had letters from the territorial governor about water rights. Hayes would have taken everything." "The governor's letters?" Miguel leaned forward. "Those could prove Hayes is stealing land illegally." Jack nodded. "If we could get word to the territorial capital—" "Too far," Sarah interjected. "Hayes's men watch roads." Jack considered their options. "Then we need those documents back. And I think I know where Hayes keeps his precious papers." As darkness fell, they finalized their plans. Miguel would ride at first light to gather the few allies they could trust. Sarah would help Jack prepare the ranch's defenses. And when Miguel returned, Jack would lead a small party to Hayes's compound to recover the stolen documents. It wasn't much of a plan against 30 armed men, but it was a start. That night, as Miguel took first watch, Jack found Sarah standing on the porch, staring at the stars. "Your people read the stars?" he asked, joining her. "All people read stars," she replied. "Different stories. Same light." Jack studied her profile in the moonlight. The bruises were still visible, but her posture had changed. Less hunted, more determined. "Why help me?" she asked suddenly. "Your fight with Hayes was already begun. Taking me makes trouble worse." Jack considered her question. "During the war, I saw men do terrible things because good men stood aside. I promised myself I'd never be that man." Sarah turned to face him. "Your war ended, this one just starting." Their eyes met in the darkness, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Dawn painted the hills gold as Miguel returned with reinforcements. The Alvarez brothers, Luis and Diego, rode alongside him, rifles strapped to their saddles. Behind them came three more men, the Johnston brothers and old Ben Tucker, whose small mining claim bordered Hayes's newly acquired properties. 7 fighters against Hayes's small army. Not great odds, but better than before. Jack laid out his plan as they gathered around a rough map drawn in the dirt. Hayes keeps an office in his main house. That's where he'd store documents, deeds, water rights, anything that gives him legal claim. Place is guarded day and night, Ben Tucker noted, his voice gravelly from years of mine dust. 4 men at least, all armed. Which is why we don't all go, Jack replied. Miguel, Sarah, and I will retrieve the documents. The rest of you create a diversion at the North Pasture. Hayes is running cattle there he took from the Wilkins place. Luis Alvarez frowned. Just 3 of you against the house guards? They won't expect it, Jack said. Everyone knows I'm a direct man. They'll think any attack from me would be head-on, guns blazing. Because that is your way, Miguel added with a slight smile. Jack couldn't argue. Subterfuge had never been his strength, but circumstances demanded adaptation. They spent the day preparing, checking weapons, planning routes, considering contingencies. Jack taught Sarah the finer points of his Winchester, surprised at how quickly she mastered the weapon's balance and sight alignment. By late afternoon, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain by nightfall. Perfect conditions for their mission. As the others made final preparations, Sheriff Miller arrived unexpectedly. Jack met him in the yard, hand resting near his holster. Didn't expect to see you here, Tom. Miller dismounted slowly, his face grim. Didn't expect to come. He glanced at the gathered men. Planning something foolish, I see. Something necessary, Jack corrected. What brings you out here? Miller hesitated. Hayes killed my deputy last night, Jimmy Ward. Shot him in the back when Jimmy questioned those men I locked up. Jack studied his old friend's face. Jimmy was your brother-in-law. He was a good man. Miller's voice cracked slightly. 23 years old. Jack waited, sensing there was more. Hayes controls the town council, the bank, half the businesses, Miller continued. But killing a lawman, he shook his head. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. So you're here because, Miller's eyes hardened, because Hayes thinks he owns the law. I aim to show him different. Jack nodded slowly. We could use a man with a badge. With Miller's help, their plan gained legitimacy. If they succeeded in recovering the documents, the sheriff could use them legally against Hayes. As dusk approached, rain began to fall, drumming on the cabin roof. Jack found Sarah preparing by the fireplace, braiding her long hair tightly away from her face. She wore clothes borrowed from Miguel's wife, dark trousers and a shirt that would allow her to move freely. You don't have to come, Jack said, checking his Colt revolver. This isn't your fight. Sarah's hands never paused in their work. Hayes took my people's land before he took yours. This was my fight first. Jack couldn't argue with her logic or her determination. In the short time he'd known her, Sarah had proven herself observant and capable. Her knowledge of moving unseen would be valuable tonight. The rain intensified as 3 groups departed. The Alvarez brothers and Ben Tucker rode north to create their diversion. Sheriff Miller headed to town to gather trustworthy men, and Jack, Miguel, and Sarah set out for Hayes's compound. They approached from the east using the storm as cover. Lightning revealed glimpses of Hayes's sprawling ranch house in the distance. Even through the rain, they could see it was more mansion than cabin, a monument to greed built on stolen land. As expected, the cattle diversion worked. Gunshots and shouts erupted from the north pasture, drawing most of the guards away from the main house. Jack and his small party crept forward through mud and rain, staying low in the shadows. Two guards remained at the house, sheltering on the porch from the downpour. Miguel created their opening, sending a small herd of horses from the corral stampeding past the house. As the guards rushed to stop the animals, Jack, Sarah, and Miguel slipped inside. The house interior spoke of Hayes's wealth: imported furniture, crystal decanters, paintings in gilt frames. They moved silently down the hallway toward what appeared to be an office at the back of the house. The office door was locked. Jack prepared to force it when Sarah produced a thin metal pick from her hair. Within seconds, the lock clicked open. "Where did you learn that?" Jack whispered. "Not all skills are taught," she replied with the ghost of a smile. "Some are taken." The office contained a massive desk and walls of books, the trappings of educated power. Jack moved directly to the safe in the corner, but Miguel pointed to the desk. "Men like Hayes," Miguel whispered. "They keep what they use close." He was right. The top desk drawer revealed stacks of deeds and documents, including Jack's stolen papers. As they gathered the evidence, voices approached from the hallway. "In the study, sir. I swear I locked it." Hayes's voice answered, cold with authority. "Then explain why it's open." There was no time to flee. Jack nodded to Miguel and Sarah, who took positions on either side of the door. When it opened, Hayes entered first, followed by a guard. Jack stood calmly behind the desk, papers in hand. Hayes recovered quickly from his surprise. He was a tall man with cold eyes and the soft hands of someone who ordered violence rather than committed it himself. "Morgan," he said, his tone conversational, despite the circumstances. "I should have known it would be you." "Just taking back what's mine," Jack replied, holding up his deed. Hayes smiled without humor. "One rancher with delusions of righteousness. You can't stop progress, Morgan. The railroad's coming through. This territory will change with or without you." "Progress isn't theft," Jack countered. "These papers show you forged signatures, bribed officials, threatened landowners. The territorial governor will be interested." Hayes's composure slipped. "You won't make it off this property alive." "I wouldn't be so sure." Sheriff Miller's voice came from the doorway as he stepped into view, badge gleaming, revolver drawn. "William Hayes, you're under arrest for the murder of Deputy James Ward." Hayes's face darkened with rage. "Miller? You pathetic drunk. I own you." "Not anymore," Miller replied steadily. The guard reached for his gun, but Miguel was faster. A quick blow rendered the man unconscious. Hayes himself made no move toward a weapon. Men like him rarely did their own fighting. "This changes nothing," Hayes spat as Miller handcuffed him. "I have men, lawyers in the Capitol. You think one night's work undoes what I've built?" Jack gathered the incriminating documents. "No, but it's a start." Outside, the storm had intensified. They emerged to find chaos. Hayes's men, returning from the north pasture, were engaging with the reinforcements Miller had brought from town. Gunfire punctuated the drumming rain. "Get those papers to safety," Miller ordered, pushing Hayes ahead of him. "I'll handle this." They hadn't made it halfway across the yard when a shot rang out. Miller grunted, stumbling forward as blood bloomed across his shoulder. Hayes seized the opportunity, breaking free and running toward the stables. Jack passed the documents to Sarah. "Get these to Miguel's horse. Go!" He pursued Hayes through the rain-soaked yard, slipping in mud as lightning cracked overhead. He caught him at the stable doors, tackling him into the dirt. Hayes fought with the desperate strength of a cornered animal, landing a solid blow to Jack's jaw. They struggled in the mud, rain washing over them as thunder boomed above. In the flashing lightning, Jack saw Hayes reach for something in his boot. The gleam of a small derringer. Jack grabbed his wrist, forcing the weapon upward as it discharged. The bullet lost in the storm. Hayes suddenly gained the upper hand, slamming Jack's head against the ground. Stars exploded behind Jack's eyes as Hayes wrenched free, bringing the derringer down toward Jack's chest. A shot cracked through the storm's fury. Hayes jerked backward, the derringer falling from his fingers. Behind him stood Sarah, Jack's Winchester steady in her hands, smoke curling from the barrel despite the rain. "Like I said," she spoke calmly over the thunder, "I learned fast." Hayes clutched his shoulder, blood spreading between his fingers, his face contorted with hatred and disbelief that a Navajo woman had bested him. With a final surge of strength, Jack rose and knocked Hayes unconscious with a powerful right hook. "Good shot," Jack said to Sarah, retrieving his rifle from her. "I aimed for his arm," she replied. "Wanted him alive to face justice." By morning, the storm had passed. Hayes and his surviving men were locked in the town jail, awaiting transport to the territorial capital. The recovered documents proved extensive fraud, not just against the ranchers but against the Navajo and other tribes whose land Hayes had systematically stolen. Jack surveyed his property from the cabin porch, assessing the damage. The barn would need rebuilding. Fences had been broken, but the land remained. Sarah joined him, her presence now familiar at his side. "What will you do now?" Jack considered the question. "Rebuild. Plant. Same as always." "And Hayes's men who escaped?" Jack nodded toward where Miguel and the others were working to repair the corral. "We'll be ready if they come back." Sarah followed his gaze. "You have people now, not just land." The observation struck Jack more deeply than he expected. For years, he defined himself by this property, his borders, his solitude. Now, looking at the men working together, he saw something else. Community. Purpose beyond mere survival. "What about you?" he asked. "Your people." "My village is gone," she said simply. "Hayes's men made sure of that. But there are survivors. They will need safe land." Jack understood her meaning immediately. "The north section, by the creek, it's good ground." Sarah's eyes held his. "You would share your land?" "It was never really mine," Jack admitted. "Just in my keeping for a while." As the sun climbed higher, Jack Morgan looked out over the land that had nearly cost him everything. The earth remained as it always had, indifferent to the struggles of the people who claimed it. Blood had been spilled, but new growth would follow. Hayes had been wrong about one thing. The future wasn't seized, it was built, one day at a time, by people who understood that land was worthless without community to give it meaning. Jack glanced at Sarah standing beside him, her face turned toward the distant hills where her people might find a new beginning. Sometimes, he reflected, the most valuable things come from the darkest days. This land would bear the scars of their struggle, just as they themselves did. But it would endure, and so would they. On a ridge overlooking the ranch, a lone rider watched the activity below. Matthew Hayes, William's younger brother, had arrived too late to prevent his brother's arrest. He raised a brass spyglass, studying the figures moving around the ranch, particularly the tall man and the Navajo woman standing side by side on the porch. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts, Morgan," he murmured, lowering the glass. He turned his horse away, disappearing into the hills. Some battles were lost. The war would continue. Back at the ranch, Jack sensed something, a scout's instinct that never truly faded. He scanned the distant ridgeline but saw nothing. Still, his hand moved to his holster, checking the familiar weight of his Colt. Whatever came next, they would be ready.